So we move on to the presentation of the Pension 2 record-keeping
Completely
platform.
different topic, yes. So, yeah, so item 4 is just, we provided you an update on the transition of Pension 2 record keeping from TIAA-CREF to Voya. We provide a lot of information. I have up here Sandy Blair, who's the director of Defined Contribution Services, and also Chris Muha, who's the lead business consultant for the Voya's e-commerce team and a member of the Digital Commerce Committee. They're the ones responsible for the whole internet product development initiatives. So we want to spend most of the time showing you the platform under Voya, but also wanted to give you an opportunity, if you had any questions about the transition, to ask those questions about issues around communications or how the transition went. We're through the transition. There are still some loose ends we're wrapping up with TIAA-CREF, but I wanted to make sure you had that opportunity. So you can either ask the questions now or wait till, because I know Sharon had some questions, or we can just move on to Chris's presentation and go from there.
Sharon's not
Yeah.
here right now. Let's move on
Okay.
to Chris, and we'll go through the presentation, and then we'll hold our questions, unless we have questions on the presentation.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Ed, and thank you to the board for having me. I'm excited to be here to talk about current technology, what's available today for members, but also talking about some of the future initiatives we're doing as a part of that digital retirement committee. So as a part of this committee, we're really taking, sort of that strong in-person focus and capabilities and meeting with members and combining that with best-in-class technology to really change the way people think about their retirement account. And if you think about it, how we're changing it is really a few goals. Really sort of looking at individuals that look at their account today and think about accumulation to really focusing on tomorrow's outcome, really around the overall income that they'll generate and someday retire with. Other things that we're looking at is to have a much more interactive experience and having people learn through behavior and telling them exactly where they stand. We've also done a lot of research around individuals and how they're thinking about retirement. And to be honest, a lot of people are thinking that I can't even think about saving for retirement with all the different financial priorities in my life. So holistic financial planning was an important aspect. People really want to help and organize their financial life before they can even think about saving for retirement. If they're maybe paying down debt, maybe they had a child, they're thinking about saving for college, maybe they're saving for a home. Those types of things are competing for the same dollars as individuals who would be saving in a retirement plan. So we're trying to get ahead of that. And through these surveys, too, we learned a lot. One of the main things that we learned is individuals, when they think about their own personal finances, the two top sort of individuals that they trust are, number one, their parents, and number two is their employer. And that surprised us. So they really trust and want their employer to make available more financial, holistic planning tools to organize their financial life, which it makes sense. With benefits and being paid by their employer, they trust them to make available these types of tools. So we've answered that need with more holistic financial planning as a part of that overall experience and really gaining confidence in individual members. So what does that all lead up to? Well, what we've done around the technology experience, and you can see it on the slide, is really had a focus more on tomorrow's outcome or an overall income. We know that prior to really having that focus on income, individuals greater than 90% would log into a web experience to look at two things. They'd look at their balance and they'd look at their personal rate of return, and they would log out, spending no more than 16 seconds within a web experience. So we're changing that where they learn something every time that they come to the web experience with, as you can see from the screen capture, a focus now more on the income or their potential income in retirement and whether or not they can sustain that income based on their goals through their retirement years. And all of this around easy navigation, the robust tools, how we personalize that overall experience, and focusing on the only thing that matters, which is whether or not they're generating enough income, has all led to Voya's technology platform being rated number one out of 52 sites reviewed. And this is by Dalbar, one of the leading financial research teams. So we're pretty proud of that. We just won that award just this past November. So why don't I take you over and actually show you what that experience looks like. So it starts off with an experience that's, of course, branded to the Pension 2 program and looking at all of that. So we have our own URL. We're able to provide messaging and speak in the language of members where we can give overall plan updates, helpful hints around accessing their account, and even being able to get into, plan highlights specifically around the 403B and 457 plans so they can drill down and get a little more information even before logging into the website itself. Now, once they log in, again, it's really around changing that primary lens from looking at a balance to really thinking about tomorrow's outcome and whether or not they're reaching their goals and so forth. So, we really try to personalize that experience and get up front with not only showing them where they are, but also being able to drive more personalized messaging to the individual. So, of course, we don't hide the balance. It's still an important component as they save for their retirement, but we don't want it to be the primary lens. So if you look at the top right through this web experience, they're still seeing their current balance as they're saving into their plans, but now the primary lens is more in what we call My Orange Money. And, starting with replacing, their current income. It looks at a default of 70% of their current income and looking at replacing that income as a standard in the industry. And, of course, they can modify that as needed. But now the focus is really on this dollar bill where it takes into account their current savings and they can add their contribution amounts for future contributions. It's looking at their pension, they can manually enter their pension amount, which is a considerable amount as part of their retirement package. We do have the capabilities of taking feeds within our record-keeping system. So we're talking to Ed and Sandy and their team about a future capability of taking feeds in of those calculated benefit amounts to immediately display as a part of this. But individual members do have the ability to add that manually today. Huh? No, I'm going to
Okay.
move through the demonstration.
Okay, well, then I have a question on this slide then. I think that having a feed from us to you is a great idea. One of the other sections on your orange bill is Social Security.
Yes.
So how do you determine that? And are you taking into account that California's teachers have the offset from Social Security at all? And how is that built into your platform?
Yeah, so as far as Social Security, they can manually add their own. So where they're not paying into the system directly around specifically Social Security, this would be more of if they already know through the Social Security Administration that they have a small benefit amount specific to that. But we certainly have that, can shut that off and they can manually add that component. Whether it's for other jobs, if they're a teacher, they're not paying into that.
Right, it's just the issue of so many of our members not realizing that they're gonna get hit by the offsets. And the confusion that many of them have about what their benefit actually is under Social Security and then what it turns out to be in reality.
Right,
So
but there
Ed-
is, the Social Security, they can plug in a number, right?
Right.
And so their Social Security does have a calculator that calculates what the benefit is after the offsets. So they could, if they ran that calculator and we sort of integrate a link to that, so they go to that, get that number, plug it in here, then they're gonna have an accurate number. It could be set up that way.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it's part of the communications that we do when, as we meet with them.
Will it take them to SSA.gov and let them do the calculation with the WEP and GPO?
Yeah, we could, I'm assuming we have a link that would take them to that particular calculator in Social Security, yeah.
We could get that fed into,
And then the member would plug in
Plug
that
that-
number.
that figure.
They'd have to plug in their earnings, so that they take their Social Security statement and plug in the numbers, but it'll do an estimate for them.
all right, thank you. Sharon, did you
Oh,
want
I
to?
was just gonna, I thought I'd. put
No,
my
jump
phone.
on the,
Oh, I did.
I got
Oh,
you.
gotcha. I just think it'd be great if we could have the links right there so that a member could go right here and then be able to go to all the other external links to get all the data to fill out their Orange Money, so they know I think the visual is really helpful to kind of figure out all the different pieces of their retirement, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more, and we have additional capabilities that we can add more messaging around that, making more awareness. So as soon as they come in, to have alerts that drive them there to get their personal calculation.
Demanding, we would be right off the bat.
Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead, Chris.
Absolutely. So as a part of that component, they can immediately see the impact of this. And this is all driven through, the advisory services that's online. So here, as you see on the right side, your investment evaluation, that's a dynamic message box. So it's really personalized to the individual. It'll give recommendations. You'll see it at some point. This will change up and give recommendations around maybe different investment mixes. It can be around, you could save an additional $2,000 annually, these types of messages, but it's dynamic. It's constantly changing to engage the audience. So here, as they go into the advisory services, now it's about, getting the advice that they need for individuals that would rather kind of go through the tool and say, listen, I could get down some of these easy choice paths and pick out recommendations that way, or they can actually go through the online advisor and get recommendations on the specific investments that are in the Pension 2 program. So here, as someone goes in, they can quickly go through the screens and complete any information that they'd want. They can actually elect for those individuals that would rather have that fee-based service professionally managed. They'd rather turn it over to the experts and say, you manage it for me. They can certainly do that. Or they can get down and get, the free service and do that, get the recommendations immediately on their own, just walking through the tool itself.
Sure.
Can you just flip back to that last slide? Oh, sorry. The
It's
one.
analyzed in, I'm sending you down that.
Oh, whoops, okay. No, it's okay then, but I guess my question was, when the member has the option to, get sort of professional help, if you will, versus make the choices on their own, when they select that top tab that you had on there, does it, when it goes to the professional, I assume to someone at Voya to help them select their investment tools, does it explicitly talk about the different fees? Is the fee structure for each of those tools visible to the member as they?
It's been really distracting.
I know, I didn't mean to make you go through the entire. My bad.
So I'll relaunch this. Sorry about that. So yes, it does talk about the overall fees, and it'll go through a number of screens. So if it's going down the path where it's professionally managed, it's going to collect as much information as possible. So it would take into consideration outside investments and so forth. So if you want to add outside investments, it's really looking at you personally and the overall allocation.
I guess, because, you look at a lot of different funds and it's like, 0.29 or 0.2, it'll kind of explicitly tell you the different fee structure for different vehicles. It's, obviously different depending on what you choose, or which fund you choose. So Voya does that, shows you that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's an important aspect where they are paying a fee-based service, and, it's a tiered approach based on balance and so forth, so it will walk you through that.
I won't ask anymore.
No, that's sorry. With the test account, sometimes when you go back and it's calculating, this is just a test environment, so no worries. These are important questions, so I certainly understand.
There you go. Even having it live, it's more exciting than it was just having the stills that we had, and they were exciting enough, so.
Oh, good.
I'm really pumped. This is really neat.
So as a part of that, you can already see, based on personal evaluation, that even that message has been changed. So here, it may be based on investment. Again, it could be on savings. But the main thing is that we're trying to get them to think about not only savings, but how they're investing. And it will change that message based on that. And so they can certainly bypass that. So going forward, it'll directly bring them into the advisory services. They don't have to go through the choice again. This is a first-time user. So here, immediately, what are your investments worth? So they can add outside accounts, things like that. their annual contributions. They can input that as part of that. So this individual, as you can see, actually has worked for 2 different school districts, so has a balance in both, contributing to one of those active today. And then how much could you have in retirement? So this is all based on the Monte Carlo methodology and probability, in good times and bad times, what you may get as far as retirement income. So, probably one of the best out there in the industry. You can certainly go into your profile and make adjustments to, how much you want to replace your income. You may have grand plans to travel in retirement, so, replacing 70% of your current income may not be enough for the plan. So it does allow you to make a lot of changes around that. So here, as they go in, they can put in their own income replacement amount. Here, $45,000 for this individual on an annual basis in today's dollars, for the pension amount as being one of those components as part of My Orange Money is important to add. And again, as I mentioned, we do have the ability to feed this information in, so we could get multiple calculations based on the individual's desired retirement age, and it would use the pension amount closest to that retirement age. So it's pretty robust in that aspect. So here, as someone reviews their own plan, it's really, around having an integrated experience. So what we want to do is make sure that it's not just simply a tool, that it's integrated as part of the process. So at the end of this, they can get their advice and take specific action. So if they want to move forward, it would reallocate their balances. It would change their future investment elections as new deferrals come into the plan. So here, for this individual, maybe looking at your current plan is very aggressive. You can change it to moderately aggressive. As you can see with the different plans, it has the recommendations around how they want to allocate to each of the investments within the Pension 2 plans. And, considering changing your contributions to increase that, or maybe possibly delaying retirement based on, the current plan. So they can review their plan and then take specific action around that ongoing. And then they get progress reports as they go. So as they log in, again, as they progress through that message will be dynamic. So as they make changes around that, and it, moving from, sort of that traffic signal from red to yellow to green, we're hopefully going to get them on the right track and saving enough around that and getting them to take action. So as you look at the rest of the web experience, as you sort of scroll down, immediately what we've done around navigation is making sure that individuals can get anywhere within the site within one click. So, being able to deep dive into their plans, not only do they get a consolidated view, but they also have pull-down menus that get them to specific action. So I want to perform, a certain action, whether it's checking a balance or, looking at their statements and so forth. They can do that within the plans themselves, or simply just look at more of a dashboard view and drilling down into that plan. One thing that I mention is we try to personalize the experience as much as possible in getting people to take action. One of the items here is an important component is to make sure, should something happen, your loved ones are taken care of and that you designate beneficiaries. Very important part of your retirement plan. So we do drive messaging out there. So someone that does not have any information, we do these personalized pop-ups, driving them to add this information. They no longer see that once they add the information.
So every time they log in, if they haven't designated a beneficiary yet, it'll pop up and say,
Yeah.
hey.
We want them to take action, and we can do it through other messaging capabilities too, but we try to pop that. We try not to use too many pop-ups because what happens in a web experience when you see too many pop-ups, you tend to close them without reading them. So we use it minimally within the experience to make sure that we're driving the right action and that they're looking at these items. But that's certainly one of the ones that we want them to take action on. As they scroll down, certain things around organizing your dollars or diversify or consolidating assets. We use predictive analytics technology in the back end, something that we introduced over a year ago. this type of technology is used a lot on the retail side, where it builds a profile around individuals and then driving them to maybe buy additional products and so forth. We're using it in the right way and taking their demographic information, their current situation, and getting them to take positive action toward their retirement. So we're using that predictive analytics as part of that messaging board to personalize that experience. But as you scroll down, you'll see some of the important components, providing more of a dashboard view of their accounts with interactive, where they can look at how they're allocated and quickly being able to manage their investments. Everything should be actionable, or looking at their balance and being able to compare 2 points in time and seeing how their balance has changed over time, and the different investments and so forth. And if you look at this top navigation, again, back to how we've improved overall navigation is making sure that individuals can take action within one click. No matter where you are within the site, you'll be able to get to the other page. Multiple accounts, you can easily toggle from one plan to the other plan if you have balances of multiple plans. So again, we've done a lot around navigation where they can look at, investments. They even have the ability to chart and compare investments offered within the pension too. So if there are two like investments and they want additional ability to look at those investments and make a good informed decision, they're able to chart and compare those investments rather than simply looking at total returns calculated on a specific date. Looking at plan highlights that are specific to either the 403B or the 457 plan, and being able to add banking information around loans, withdrawals, and so forth, and a message center that we're able to really target individuals based on specific criteria. So we've really built in robust technology to drive positive action. So that's kind of an overview of where we're at with current technology, some of the recent initiatives that we've put in. But where are we going? So as a part of the Retirement Digital Committee, we have a lot of things that we're working on. So as I talked about changing the way people think about their retirement, well, we already have an award-winning mobile app, Voya Retire, where they can go in, they can use the same login credentials that they would use on the participant website, gives them a dashboard of information, but also allows them to manage their investments directly through this mobile app. Well, we'll be updating that this coming spring and introducing My Orange Money so that they're focused on the right things and really thinking about tomorrow's outcome. We're also changing the interface. So as you look at sort of that dynamic messaging, we want to make it more interactive. So as you log into the website, that dynamic messaging will be just above that panel, but we're introducing more sliders. So up-leveling some of those great features that are within the online advisor and bringing it up a level so that they can do quick modeling. So, being able to increase my contribution, how does that impact my money? So immediately they're seeing the impact without coming back to that Orange Money page after they've done some modeling. When do I plan on retiring? Looking at the impact of that. And then notice on the bottom, as part of this overall panel, adding additional apps to that. So, without going into the online advisor to add, the pension amount or some of those things, they can do it directly through this button, other income sources. So trying to make it as easy as possible for individuals to add all of this together so we get a full retirement picture. Other things that we're looking at is, one of the largest expenses in retirement, which is healthcare costs. So adding modeling around that. We've done a lot of surveys, and people are just not thinking about healthcare in retirement. They're really solely thinking about maybe their retirement income and some of the things that they want to do in retirement, but they're really not thinking about the expenses, and one of the largest expenses being that healthcare. So we want people to at least understand, based on their projected retirement income on a monthly basis, how much of that may be allocated towards healthcare expenses. So we want people to at least create awareness and be able to make adjustments now to save additional dollars toward that. So looking at the overall digital committee, I wanted to kind of sort of lay out the overall roadmap and some of the things that we're focused on based on, whether it's the research through Voya's Retirement Research Institute, where we do a lot of surveys, data mining, and so forth, the things that we learn there, competitive analysis, but of course, the important things that we learn through, user behavior, feedback from members and business partners such as yourself, and gaining feedback, these are some of the things that we're focused on. So this year, we're looking at, again, those sliders, so more enhanced advice integration is a part of that to make it a more interactive experience. Leveraging the power of peer comparison. Things that we've done in the past, we actually created Voya Compare Me. It's a website that we created and leveraged the power of peer comparison. No one wants to be average, so when they compare themselves to someone just like them, they tend to take action. So, in the aspect of savings or, being retirement ready, they'll be able to do quick comparisons around that as a motivational feature. More integrated Roth guidance, so people don't know whether, it's a benefit to them to pay taxes now, pay taxes later, and the power of that Roth feature, we want them to do more modeling around that and educate them on whether it may be appropriate for them or whether they just want to use it as sort of a tax hedge and do a little bit of both. Again, we'll continue to personalize messaging throughout the overall web experience, so taking specific actions, we want to draw up and educate them at that point of contact. From an access standpoint, adding My Orange Money View to both mobile but as well as statements. Again, we want to focus on tomorrow's outcome as a part of that. As they transition to retirement, thinking about healthcare guidance, Social Security guidance, very important feature around that, and what applies to individual teachers as well as other administration. And we're also looking at an in-retirement experience. So as individuals actually retire, they're no longer saving. So as you look at that My Orange Money View, we want to pivot that view to be someone, that may be in retirement and thinking about making sure that that lasts throughout their, their retirement years. So looking at possibilities and how we can change that for those individuals. And of course, we'll actually be redesigning our sponsor site. So, Ed and Sandy and their team and the tools that we provide to them to give them insight into the Pension 2 program, enhancing that overall service and really making sure that that website has easier navigation and then up level and more sort of dashboard reports and what we consider sort of the health of the plan. How many people are on track? For those that actually added some of those components, how many are on track for replacing their income in retirement and those types of things. So adding a little more capability around that so they have a full idea of where the plan's at. And then as we look at 2016, some of the things we're already thinking about is more budgeting. So I talked about the power of holistic and making sure that individuals are more confident in their current financial situation. We want to do a lot around that. Loan transaction impact and investment transaction. So making sure that as individuals, do these sort of things, these transactions, whether it's taking a loan, that they understand the impact around that. So more around budgeting capabilities. What I did not show you is our current personal financial dashboard. I want to give you a little bit more around that. So, as individuals are really looking at this web experience, what we offer today is a link called Organize My Dollars. So this is available today, and individuals can actually launch this to either go down a quick 10-minute path, 4 simple steps to get their personal action plan, or really pull together their current financial assets. So all of their financial accounts in one spot. So through this experience, they can actually pre-populate their current balances. So if they're contributing to the 403B, 457, it'll automatically pre-populate those balances. For an individual, for a first-time user, it drops them directly into an organizer. So through this, they can add all of their financial accounts through the household. So, as they look at the current checking account, credit cards, mortgage, maybe they've had a child and have started a 529 plan, they can add all of these components to this, either manually or they can search on a financial institution, save their login credentials, and this will update automatically whenever they launch this tool. So all of this being encrypted on the back end, and as they sort of go through this, they can also, as part of the workshops, add family and associates, or basically anyone that fits into their financial future. So, someone that may have had a child may already be thinking about college savings, those types of things. So they can quickly go through and, add children to this as well. Here, as they go down the list, financial priorities. A lot of these folks are speaking with individual advisors and, this really is just an exercise in helping them understand what may be important to them, and it may just invoke some questions as they sit down with an advisor, things around planning for retirement, saving for college, managing a budget, to name a few. Looking at, their annual income, savings, and expenses, or basically all the incoming and outgoing assets within a household they can add together. For someone that may have added or own a home and have a mortgage, their first question may be, what's it worth? So they can quickly go into this module as they type in their address. It's fully integrated with Zillow, one of the top real estate sites out there, and we'll pull in the most recent Zestimate. So they'll be able to pull in that amount, and that also gets pulled into their dashboard as part of their overall net worth, an important component. And some people are actually thinking about this component as being an important retirement aspect, maybe downsizing, maybe going into a condo and taking some of that to supplement their income and maybe traveling on some of that. So it gets them thinking about that. And then it even has a risk tolerance questionnaire where they can quickly go in and, what sort of investor am I? My time horizon and my tolerance for risk. They can quickly go through a 5-question questionnaire. Now, all of this, as they bring in this organizer, really brings alive the workshops. Of course, retirement being first and foremost, given more general, why is it important around retirement, interactive experience, so we do have multimedia as they can sit back and listen to it. But other modules that are important too is, whether their family's protected. So looking at life insurance, do I have enough? So they can quickly go through and even learn a little bit, term and whole life and some of those things. But they can also, if they've added a policy, it would automatically be brought into this module so that they can do what-if statements. So with this, should something happen to me, making sure that, my wife can take care of the bills, pay down debt, educate the kids, and someday retire. So doing different scenarios like that. For someone that, has children, they're already thinking about college savings. That may be an important thing to them. So they're already thinking about, should I be thinking about that now? What's it going to cost? So they can quickly go through, and as they've added individual children to that organizer, they can actually set, a different strategy per child. So they can actually go out there, they can search on different schools. It's loaded with schools across the nation. So for this, they can get the all-in cost of the school and compare it.
We can do a scenario with the kids going to school. You want to put them in?
Yeah. Well, I've done the same things. I am with you. And in fact, I did bring my son through this, and we went through the cost, and it was UMass, or Massachusetts Maritime Academy, both state schools, and he selected Massachusetts Maritime Academy, so this actually worked. And from here, so as they look at the averages, now it's really about understanding, what it's going to cost. Now, how much do I need to save around this? So it helps them sort of come up with a strategy. If they're getting any financial aid, anything like that, they can add it to this tool. So really, it's around creating awareness around that and things that they need to prepare for. And then from here, as they come in, that was a first-time user sort of going through the workshops and adding everything, but their view is much different for repeat users. So as they launch this tool, now it's more of a dashboard view. I can look at my overall net worth. In fact, I can actually drill down and get a balance sheet for my household, assets, liabilities. Again, we want to gain confident members looking at their current situation, saying, okay, I need to pay down this debt, but I can also do a little saving in between. Looking at their investments, and maybe they brought in some outside investments. It's, if they save their login credentials, it'll bring in the underlying investments as a part of that. So if they want to drill down and look at how that value may have changed for those various accounts, they can certainly.
So that will scrape other mutual fund investment balances, okay?
It will. So is
Even if they're on double sign-in and everything else?
yeah, and an important term to that is it's not screen scraping, because there are a lot of issues out there with that. This is really more of a connectivity with the back-end technology of pulling it in. So it's looking at the security credentials for that particular firm,
Right.
and then pulling it in. So they already have a relationship with this financial firm to pull it in a specific format.
So they'll work with most mutual fund families that are members.
Absolutely, there are thousands
Yeah.
that, yep, absolutely.
Yeah, Vanguard has that similar thing, but I find it doesn't work on some of the security gates, but this works well.
Yeah, it does. So as you look at, you may have heard some of the data aggregator technologies out there, Yodlee being one of them. This uses a similar technology. This uses Cache Edge, which is the other leading sort of data aggregator, to pull this information.
It's great.
Yeah. And then, of course, spending. So individuals that may have added a credit card or their checking account, this may scare some people, but it'll bring in the underlying history, and it'll take that and categorize it. So, making sure people know what they're spending on, and most importantly, to make sure that individuals can set a budget. So, whether it's drinking 4, cups of Starbucks coffee a day and cutting back on that, or they can look at how much they're dining out on a weekly basis, at least creating awareness and creating a budget around that so they can save a little bit more around retirement. So that's available today, so we'll continue to enhance that experience, and we'll be doing a lot of reporting around that. So what we're doing around reporting is individuals that may interact with the personal financial dashboard, and of those, how many are really taking action after that and doing some things. So we've done a lot foundationally to be able to capture information and report that back to you on what members are doing. But the important fact is this is personal and confidential information. So, being a board or Ed and Sandy's team, they do not have access to this personal and confidential information, just account information. This is more of a tool for individuals so that they can do it on their own and, gain a little confidence and set budgets and so forth. Any questions?
First of all, just in relationship to the presentation, will we have a mechanism that CalSTRS members who are new Voya members to give feedback about the site? Is there a mechanism we'll have in place?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have survey. Yeah, we have survey capabilities that we do through the web experience to gain access to that.
You work for Voya, right?
I do,
So, okay,
yeah.
so I just want to make sure, so that's great, but I want to make sure CalSTRS staff, we're getting feedback from Voya
Yes.
on the user experience? Okay.
Yes, so we will
'Cause
have quarterly meetings. The first one will be February 18th, I think, and they will update us on the plan as far as the overall plan, survey information from not only the web, but the call center on the online surveys that they do after the call.
We'll be soliciting input from our members that are in pension too. Because I just know any transition, there's always bugs, and obviously want to do right by our members, and they're the ones who know how to use it the most effectively or have the most feedback. So I just want to make sure we have mechanisms in place so that not only Voya, but for us, our team, that we get lots of good feedback that will help us serve them more efficiently and effectively. I had a couple other questions, Ed, about with the transition. So I know there were like three traditional TIA accounts that we couldn't transfer to Voya. Is that right? I'm just sort of concerned about the TIA folks that couldn't, we couldn't sort of neatly transfer them into the Voya, and how that communicate. What was sort of your experience so far, Sandy? I know in the write-up it said our staff has been fairly successful, so I kind of was like, what does fairly successful look like? What does that mean? And I just, obviously concerned about those TIA folks that might not have. What was that transition like? How many members were affected? And can you talk
So
about
we
that?
had, early on, we had the TIA traditional money within the Easy Choice. We had a 10% allocation. So it looked at the overall TIA traditional balances, which were $148 million. So we were able to transfer 10% of that. So primarily, all the Easy Choice TIA traditional money, they went in whole with the exception of about 120 participants in the conservative 2020 portfolio. So what we did with those individuals is we reached out individually with a special letter to them, as well as made personal outreach calls, letting them know that their whole conservative 2020 portfolio didn't move over. Then they had the opportunity to complete the direct transfer form, and about half of them did that. Also early on, prior to transition, we sent out a letter encouraging participants to consolidate their money with Voya. Those who returned that, we sent out about 4,000 letters. They sent back form. That money was moved prior to transition, prior to the quiet period, into the money market account. All of that money then mapped over to the Voya Fix Plus 3. With that, and then the $14 million that moved, we moved a total of $73 million out of the $148 million that was in the traditional at transition, right. So since then, we have sent out a communication in mid-December with the direct transfer form. That went out to 3,040 participants. We have since gotten back 1,139. That was as of the end of January, and that accounts for another $27 million that will be moving. And that's kind of in flux right now, because as of the end of January, TIA still reported having $54 million. Some of that hadn't all moved over to Voya yet.
Members who don't do any, basically that were in the conservative and that they didn't submit the paperwork, what happens with them?
We will still continue to reach out with them, as well as the other participants who have money still at TIA. We do have, as part of the contract at some point, we can choose to do the 84-month, where they would move money in equal increments of everybody's balance that's there over an 84-month period. And anytime during that time, the participants can still choose to say, I don't want this little bit going every month, and then do a direct transfer form and move their remaining balance.
And then Ed, I was also curious, what was there a change at all in terms of the return or the interest rate going from the TIA traditional to Voya in terms of the kind of, rate that
There
folks
was,
that were
well,
in the fund-
under the contract with Voya, there's a guaranteed rate for the first 5 years, which Sandy can speak to, which is higher than the guaranteed rate that TIA CREF is paying. After that point, obviously it'll sort of depend upon the relative interest rates environment, but yes, there is a difference between the interest rate that the TIA traditional is paying, and it's sort of dependent upon what the vintage of that particular, when they bought into TIA versus this, but we do have a higher.
So, like Ed said, with the vintage rates, some individuals who have a long-term TIA traditional account, if they had put over that, let's say 6 months, and that account was paying 4.3% at that time, and over that 6 months, they put $2,000 in there, that $2,000 is still earning that 4.3%. Down to what they're currently paying at this time is 3.1% on current new money going in. So they have basically a blended rate, so that varies quite substantially depending upon when individuals deposited money.
I get that.
I think it was calculated kind of overall with our consultant, and on average it was about like a 3.2 blended across all, I believe was what he had calculated.
In the new Voya.
And so now in the new Voya, for the first year, it's paying 3.75%, and it goes down 1/4% each year unless interest rates rise, and then it could be higher.
Those are minimums. They're not.
Yeah.
So it's a guaranteed minimum.
Anything else, Sharon? Grant?
Thanks. Quick comment and then a question for Ed. Thanks for the presentation. That looks like a really powerful tool. I wish my plan had something more like that. It's very holistic, and it seems like you can play around and then you push people to action. But in the staff memo, there's a write-up path forward. Wondered, are features like automatic enrollment, automatic escalation, things that we've ever considered or might in the future? I imagine there's legal and administrative issues we need to think about.
Yeah, there are issues around that. In terms of doing auto enroll, they can negotiate that now at the local level, auto enrollment. You know, in terms of having a requirement that everybody auto enroll, I think would require legislative change. I think the biggest issue associated with auto enrollment in California, given the fact that the law provides for any willing provider, as long as you're enrolled in 403B Compare, is deciding what the default plan is. So it would be an interesting competitive environment if, yes, it would be. So I mean that would be the issue. We're not in the position of saying we're enrolling everybody in the pension too. That would be a decision that a district can make, is we want to enroll everybody in the pension too, and then they'd have to contend with all the other vendors saying, no, we want you to enroll in this plan or that plan or that plan.
Thanks.
Is there any other questions? Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Chris. Thanks, Ed. Great presentation. Oh, actually, don't move yet, because we do have a request from a member of the public to speak. Dr. Diane Studley. Diane, are you in the mic on either side? Take your pick. And I understand that you have a written statement, if you're willing to give that to us after you're done, and we would make sure that that was added to our record.
Let me tell you what happened. On my way here, I started thinking about 3 things I left out. So that's why I made a note. Not today do I want to submit, but I'm happy to do so. First of all, thank you to the discussion I've heard, and I wanted to thank Paul. Some of the questions that you're bringing forward about how does it affect everybody is very important to someone like myself, because I'm one of the participants. So I'll just read my statement. I think it fits right in. And by the way, if Mr. Muha were the person answering the phone at Voya, I probably wouldn't be here today. And if the administrative staffs that I have contacted at STRS and through Voya had been more mindful in hearing what I was saying to them, I wouldn't be here today. So my hope is there's some thinking about how the rubber does hit the road after these great decisions are made on behalf of all of us. And being a member who has definitely loved STRS, I think the educators in California certainly appreciate the work that's been done. I'm writing to present my concerns regarding the recent transition of Pension II funds from TIAA-CREF to Voya. As a retired school administrator who has funds in Pension II, I can only say this has been the sloppiest transition I have ever seen in my lifetime. STRS has always been such a great institution for educators, but now I'm wondering if this group is going the way of other institutions in terms of decline and decay of the strengths that once made them great. With this transition, I have often asked myself if 2 guys were having a drink on the beach, then turned to each other and said, let's do this. Because they are in role positions that they can make this happen, it does. Do they think about how to manage and implement this change? I understand that Voya is for the young educator, and the focus is on promoting the idea of building a retirement fund early on in their lives. I have no problem with this idea, but how can one gain any confidence in the new system when there have been so many flaws, not only in the transition, but also in the current poor customer service that Voya provides at the entry level? The lack of competence at this level requires me always to ask for a supervisor. I have never had to do this with TIAA-CREF. And so here are a few other things that I've confronted in the transition. For those people who had supplemental retirement funds being sent to TIAA-CREF, no Voya address had been developed for us to continue this process. Both STRS and Voya representatives believed nothing had to be done and that it was all in place, when in reality no communication had gone to these plan administrators. I alerted them several times about my communications with the Supplemental Retirement Funds Administrator and that their assumptions were incorrect. 2 days before the rollover, I finally was able to get a Voya supervisor to take action on this. In the rollover, no beneficiaries were transferred. We have not received to date any communication that this is so, to encourage participants to redo their beneficiary information. I became concerned when I created my account because a prompt would open out in the middle of the screen asking if one wanted to add a beneficiary. Of course, my answer would be no, because I had already done that with TIAA-CREF. At some point, I contacted Voya supervisors who could not find any beneficiary information and weren't sure of what happened, so I entered the data again into their new system. The contrast between TIACREF and Voya customer relations and communications is stark. The Voya phone system is not user-friendly. If I am calling the company, I obviously want to talk with a representative. But the first thing I always noticed is the message and the fervent prompt for me to use the online account, with the afterthought that I could talk with a representative. It shows the intention that online is better and the desired outcome, and that the company doesn't really want to talk to their participants. Additionally, they require the caller to put in Social Security numbers and the password you have created for your own account before you can get anyone to speak to you. If you don't enter it and are just asking for a human representative to answer a few general questions, the system automatically sends to your home address the password you have personally created. The system thinks you don't know your own password and sends it through the mail automatically. I don't want my passwords going through the mail. When you do get to a first-level customer relations person, they simply do not know very much. One representative was literally reading from a script, and another redirected me with faulty information in terms of how to take a distribution of funds. After these experiences, I started asking for a supervisor with the following contacts. The supervisor level at Voya is the level I'm used to getting with TIACREF's first line of customer service. Additionally, I have noticed that the written communication coming from Voya regarding the confirmation of monies being sent to them reminds me of something a junior high student would do, as contrasted to the very professional TIACREF written communication. By the way, I received no interest for my monies in Pension 2 for the 2-week period prior to November 1st, 2014. As a traditional account holder, obviously conservative in my funds had to be transferred to a CREF account before being transferred to Voya, and I received no interest in taking this step. Additionally, STRS touts the administration fees would be reduced, but I just paid out more in administrative fees for a 2-month period than I've ever paid before. At this point in time, I surely have a lack of confidence in the selection of this company and its ability to provide services. So there you have it. That's been my experience, and I'm hoping that it doesn't mean it's been a lot of people's experience, but that's been mine. Wanted to share that and hope I can get people to sort of listen in on those issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, Dr. Studley. We appreciate it. All right. Ed, coming to you for your report.
Oh.
Yeah.
Just one thing, just to give you just an update since the last time we met, that the part-time task force, which meets once a year, had met again in October. And just a couple things just about what's going on. We met in October for our annual meetings. We reviewed an approach that LA Community College District uses with their MOU to try to clearly distinguish the minimum hours for different disciplines that might become a model that other districts might use to simplify our challenge that we continue to have about making sure that people get their service credit calculated correctly. So that's something that hopefully other districts will take a look at, and perhaps they'll adopt that approach. They also discussed how employers and employees can have different contribution rates with this cash balance now that there's been a change made in that. And then the service retirement, we presented an update on the implementation of AB 1480 or 1586, which is something that was applicable to members who retired under a very special circumstance. The other thing, not related to the task force itself, but with part-timers, I want to let the committee know is working with COG. You know, there's been an ongoing challenge of a lot of the part-timers in terms of feeling that the information that we generally provide members, while it's extraordinarily useful, isn't necessarily pertinent to the uniqueness that part-time educators, the adjunct faculty, have had to face. So client outreach and guidance is going to begin in the different member service centers, designating personnel to become like specialists in part-time educators, and they'll actually work with Sharon and with some of the other people that we work with who are certainly very familiar on part-time issues, both in CalSTRS but also in the field, try to identify those topics that we can get the counselors trained in so that they can provide that specialized expertise. So when they can do workshops or meeting with part-time members, they'll be able to answer those questions up front. So I think that'll probably make things a lot easier for the members. I think there'll be a much higher level of satisfaction with the counseling, because we'll be able to provide that unique information to the members. So we're excited about that. Other than that, I have nothing else to report.
Peggy, before you go, Sharon, you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment and just thank Ed and your staff for being so responsive to part-time community college faculty. I know there's part-time K through 12 educators, but I know, part-time community college faculty and educators are a small slice of the membership. But as you know, Ed's been on the road with me speaking at different community colleges around the state. The kinds of questions that they're asking, it's staggering how confused they are, and our districts don't always do a great job communicating the options for part-time faculty, especially when you work at 2, 3, 4 different districts. And so I really appreciate how seriously you take the concerns of a small part of our membership, and I know you've been enjoying your time immensely, exploring campuses around the state. But I think it's really been a real great piece of who we are at CalSTRS is to educate our members about what your options are. And I really appreciate, it's been really enjoyable doing that with you as well. But I also think it's serving the community college, faculty and K through 12 part-time folks, that for them, this is just a real maze. I mean, I know for everyone it's a maze, but there's a certain complexity to them. And I just,
It's interesting that, Sharon and I have experienced this, is the what they don't know. Like, we had that one experience where this person got up and goes, what does CalSTRS stand for? I mean, they know that little about things, and then it just sort of goes downhill from there. So it's fun. It's a good experience.
which if you can get that first piece to get, it's so, I really appreciate your hard work on that. Thank you, Ed.
Alrighty, Peggy?
So I just have one thing, and it's in follow-up to a request that was made at the November meeting, which is when the committee last met, relevant to the conversation about individuals who have received a retirement incentive and returned to work for the same employer within 5 years, which causes us to then rescind the value of that incentive. And we were asked to come back with some cost information about what kinds of activities and cost it would incur if we notified each of the individuals who was potentially subject to that kind of benefit offset. And data that we pulled indicated that as of the end of the calendar year, there are 845 members who are potentially in this pool. 85 of them from 2010, and we have numbers based on a yearly basis. The biggest number, 2011, probably a good year for districts to incent people to retire. We looked at 4 ways that we could notify individuals, and there are some pros and cons of each of them. First and foremost, we could do USPS first class regular mail. There's a cost of about, a hard cost of about $1,200 to do that in postage. And we only looked at postage. We didn't look at the staff time in order to generate letters that would go out. If we did that same kind of notification, USPS certified mail, the cost increases to about $16,500. Plus, it very much exacerbates the staff time because each of those have to be hand processed. We looked at whether we could do just a general MyCalSTRS notification to those individuals, but only 90% of them can be reached through their MyCalSTRS account. The other 10% have not registered for a MyCalSTRS account, and we don't know how many of them would actively look at their MyCalSTRS account to see that information. And then we also considered whether an email notification would suffice to those individuals to just notify them without any personally identifying information, but to just notify them. And we have email addresses for about 98% of them, but but there's a caveat there. I don't have any way of knowing how many of those email addresses are actually current and valid and still utilized by those individuals. So it's certainly doable workload for us to notify those individuals. I can't not give you an estimate of future costs because I don't know how many additional people will be added to that pool. We're entirely dependent on what happens in school districts as they try and manage their aging population and make decisions that have budgetary concerns addressed for them. So I would follow the direction of the committee in terms of how you would like us to go about notifying these individuals, or if notification is even still a concern that you want us to address.
Personally, for me, I think notification is something that we need to address, because there have been several members that have been caught up in that. I would imagine that the employer number is smaller, because when they
I'm
put
sorry,
forward the incentives, they probably had several people retire under those incentives. Would the number be dramatically smaller? Because I think one of the things that, I know the onus is on the member, but when a district calls and says they're desperate, which is where we're having the most issues, members are returning to their former districts. Is there a way to find out what districts are?
Certainly, we know, we can, while there are 845 individuals, there are not 845 school districts, so you're correct in assuming that it's a smaller group. And remember that we've changed our business process so that employers are required to submit documents that indicate now what those limitations are. So we don't expect that there would be the surprises aspect for members that exists now, but certainly it's something that members could forget over the course
So
of ensuing years while they're enjoying retirement.
And I think of what I was thinking about is if we would remind districts, don't call these people back, to put them in that position or whatever.
I think the challenge, honestly, Dana, that we would have with that is that we don't necessarily know who to tell at the district.
That's true,
Because
too.
we could go through our normal contacts, but those individuals might not be the school secretary
Absolutely,
who's
that's
calling
doing the
from
phone
a
call.
specific school site to say, Ed, come teach fourth grade math, we need you, or
Absolutely.
whatever. I'm trying to find something you'd be competent at doing, yeah.
Calculus, continuation high school.
I have confidence in you.
Thank you.
Yeah, the only people who really have control over,
So,
would be-
so I worry that we would not achieve our intended objective if we relied on that as the mechanism for notification.
So pleasure of the committee, would we like to have this as a agenda item? Go ahead.
I'm going to just suggest that you notify the 845 employees with the $1,200 cost associated with it.
Certainly, we can do that.
I think
We'll
it would be
create a
worth it.
generic notification and make it as specific as we can to help those individuals. I'm not sure that we'll be able to tailor it to all of their unique circumstances, but we'll see what we can do in order to
Alrighty.
generate that and make that happen. It will take some staff time, so I want to make sure that it's clear
Absolutely.
that it's not something that we're going to get out by the end of this month.
No, we're good, just as long as we're going down that road, I'm good with that.
Okay.
Brian, do we need a formal motion to do so?
The item's not on the agenda, so.
Oh, so we
I
need to
think-
agendize it.
I think we've given guidance to staff to contact the members, and so I think giving guidance to staff is
Okay.
sufficient. However, if you want to agendize it and have a full discussion.
No, if you think we're okay going this route, we're good.
I think giving
All right.
staff guidance is fine.
All righty, thank you.
That's all I have, Madam Chair.
All righty, so then we have our draft agenda. Speaking of agendas, for our April meeting. Anybody have any questions or input? Going back to our review of information requests, one of the things that we didn't make absolutely clear when we had Mark and Nick was the technical change, so let's make sure that that comes through on that item that we're gonna see in April. Sharon?
I think the only other thing I was interested in, and I think I talked to you about this, Ed, was on the item 6, the member service center overview. I think I mentioned to you kind of if there's some kind of, I don't know if they call it a heat map or a demo map of service centers And,
Business area.
oh, sorry, Peggy. I guess I apologize for.
Go, Peggy, go.
Well, I trust Ed to some degree, and this used to be his business area.
I'm dealing with fourth grade math now.
Yeah.
So the answer is that, yes, we have all kinds of information, and we'll be happy to share the path that we go through in order to decide where we locate a member service center that does show where members live, where they work, what the commute paths are, what the safety records are, all of those kinds of things.
Complex as that. I think I'm just curious about numbers, sort of, if we can kind of get clumps of like how many members live around Riverside, how many members live
Yes.
around.
Yes, that's all part of the
Santa Clara?
analysis. That's all part of the analysis that goes into site location.
Okay, so yeah, if we could just see that in April, that'd be great. Thank you,
Super.
Peggy.
Thanks. And one of the things that we had in our minutes that we talked about having information brought back was the participation. We did the demographic thing, and we asked about if we had the ability to break charter members out of that. And we were going to bring that back, so can we put that on your radar
Yeah,
again?
I can add that. You can either, maybe part of the DCO report or something, we can provide the information. Sure.
Thank you. All right, seeing nothing else, is there any further input from the public at a mic? All righty, Harry,
30 minutes?
30 minutes.
30-minute lunch.
All right, 30-minute duty for your lunch. We are adjourned. Thank you.